Hi, we're here today to discuss a proper pre-trip on your vehicle. Let's go ahead and dive right into it. Every good pre-trip starts with an exterior vehicle inspection. We want to just take a couple minutes and examine the side of our vehicle. We're looking for any kind of deformities or damage that we might find. Make sure that our mirrors are attached, all of our glass is clean, not cracked. Go ahead and check our fuel, make sure that the cap is on tight. We're also looking at our light lenses to make sure that they're in good condition. Alright, let's go ahead and dive into under the hood. On most vehicles, the hood release is right by the driver's side door.
Alright, now that we're under the hood, there's 5 essential fluids that we need to check. Brake fluid, coolant, power steering, engine oil, and transmission fluid.
Now, let's discuss the proper way to check your engine oil level. We want to grab the dipstick for engine oil, pull it all the way out, wipe it off as we pull it out. Make sure it's completely clean. Stick it back in, give it just a second, pull it back out, and look at it. Let's make sure that the oil is between the add and the full mark. On this dipstick, there's 2 holes in there. A hole for the lower and a hole for the top. If it's between those 2 holes, you should be good to go. Make sure you don't get any dirt on it. Stick it back in, and we'll call it good.
Alright, let's go ahead and move on to the parts that are harder to see. The Serpentine Belt powers the alternator, the AC compressor, and your power steering pump. This belt's made of rubber, and it can break, so if it's loose, it can cause it to have slippage. Or if any of these pulleys are seized up, you'll hear a loud squeaking noise.
Alright, let's go ahead and inspect our front suspension and our front tire. Let's go ahead and start with these coil springs in here. All heavy-duty vehicles have coil springs on the front end. These coil springs are secured at the top as well as at the bottom. We want to make sure that they're mounted and secured properly. They're not coming loose. We also want to look at the spring itself and make sure that there's no cracks, welds, or breaks anywhere in that metal. The next thing we want to look at is the shock absorber. The shock absorber actually has oil inside of it, so we want to make sure that that oil's not leaking out of it. We also want to check and make sure that it's mounted and secure. They mount at the top as well as the bottom. Make sure those bolts are tight and that they're not coming loose. Alright, let's go ahead and move on to our tire. We're going to look for 3 main things on our tire. We want to look at our tread condition and tread depth. We want to make sure that our tire looks like it's in good condition on the sidewall and that it's inflated properly. The best way to check for tread depth is to put a penny in there, and if you can see Abe Lincoln's head, then you need to replace your tires. When we get to the sidewalls, we want to make sure that there's no bulges, no cuts, and no gouges in them. I want to go ahead and check our inflation. Now, with most tires on most vehicles, you should be able to see if the tire is low or flat just by how it looks down here on the bottom. If it's bulging out, tire's probably a little low. But the best way to check it for sure is to pull off this valve stem cover and put a tire gauge on that and check for the pressure. There's a few more things we want to check down here. Our rim is one of those. Our rim's made out of metal, so we want to make sure that it doesn't have any cracks, welds, or breaks in it. The next thing we want to look at is our lug nuts. They're usually under a hubcap. We're going to go ahead and pull our hubcap off today, and we're going to touch each one of those lug nuts. Make sure that it's at least finger tight. Now, our lug nuts should be a lot tighter than that, but if you can wiggle anything with your finger, you need to get them tightened up. Next is going to be our hub. All vehicles have this inner hub on them, but not all vehicles look the same. This is a 4-wheel drive truck with manual locking hubs in it. There's either oil or grease inside of these hubs, and we want to make sure that none of those are leaking out. So if there's any kind of seepage or any kind of oil residue on the side of that, we want to get it to a shop to get it repaired. There's a few more things we want to look at on this front axle, like our brakes. Let's go ahead and dive into those. This particular vehicle has disc brakes on it. Most late model vehicles, especially light duty vehicles, have disc brakes on the front end of them. What this does is this caliper squeezes two pads together in order to slow the vehicle down. The other thing we want to look at is our brake lines. We want to make sure that our brake lines are in good condition and that they are not rotted or broken or cracked in any way. Let's go ahead and inspect this rear axle. Keep in mind that we're going to inspect the rear axle the exact same way that we inspected the front axle. There's a few things that we want to talk about that we haven't discussed on the front axle though. First off, whenever we're checking our inflation of our tire, there's a spot on each individual tire that will tell you exactly what it's supposed to be inflated to. We want to find that and make sure that it is inflated within those ranges. Again, we're going to check tread exactly the same, our sidewalls exactly the same, our rim, and our lug nuts. We're going to pull that hubcap off and check each one of our lug nuts. If we find any problems, we want to get them taken care of before we start to drive.
Alright, that concludes our pre-trip. Remember to stay safe out there and arrive alive every time.